Welcome to the deep dive. You've brought us a stack of sources, articles, research notes, and we're diving in to surface the most important knowledge and insight.
Yeah, think of it as your shortcut to being well-informed, packed with surprising facts and maybe some different perspectives.
And this deep dive is entirely tailored for you, based on the material you've shared with us.
Absolutely. Today, we're tackling a topic that affects so many chronic and mystery illnesses,
Right, with a specific look at thyroid conditions.
but we're doing it through a very particular lens, one that really challenges a lot of conventional thinking.
That's right. Our main source for this dive is the book Medical Medium Thyroid Healing by Anthony William.
And he presents information that, well, as he states, it comes from an unconventional source. He calls it the spirit of compassion.
So our mission today, using this book as our guide, is to really unpack its core claims.
Yeah, what are the surprising facts and insights it puts forward about what might really be happening behind these widespread health issues?
Let's jump in.
Okay, so the central premise presented in this source is, well, it's quite a departure from what most of us have heard.
How so?
It claims that many chronic and mystery illnesses, and this includes thyroid problems like Hashimoto's, Graves', hypothyroidism, nodules,
Okay.
but also conditions like MS, lupus, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, anxiety, depression, brain fog, various pains.
Wow, that's a wide range.
It is. And the claim is they are not fundamentally autoimmune issues or genetic problems or psychological in origin.
Not autoimmune. That's a big one, especially for thyroid conditions.
Exactly. Instead, the book makes the case that the primary culprit for so many of these conditions is the Epstein-Barr virus, EBV,
EBV.
often working in conjunction with environmental toxins, yeah.
And this source is pretty blunt about its view of conventional medicine's understanding of the thyroid, right?
Oh, very blunt. It suggests that current science is vague, theoretical, and essentially still in the dark about the true causes, lagging far behind.
It even refers to common diagnostic tests as guess tests.
Guess tests. Yeah, that certainly tells you where the source is coming from regarding the current state of affairs.
Now, one really striking concept the book introduces is what it terms the great mistakes.
It identifies 9 key errors in how chronic illness is understood.
9.
9, which it argues cause immense suffering and misdirection.
What's fascinating here is how these mistakes aren't just minor quibbles. They're presented as, foundational errors.
Totally. That completely steer both individuals and the medical community away from the actual root causes, according to the book.
Okay, let's zero in on a few that really stand out. The first one you mentioned, autoimmune confusion.
Right. The source directly confronts the fundamental idea that the body attacks itself.
So no self-attack.
Precisely. According to this book, the body never turns against its own tissue.
But what about antibodies? That's the usual explanation, isn't it?
Well, the source says those antibodies detected in autoimmune tests, the ones seen as proof of self-attack, are actually targeting invaders.
Invaders like?
Pathogens, like the Epstein-Barr virus.
Okay. And inflammation.
That's not a sign the body is going haywire. The source says it's purely a symptom,
A symptom.
a result of the body fighting a pathogen or dealing with an injury, not the cause itself.
So that inflammation seen in, say, a Hashimoto's diagnosis, that isn't the thyroid being attacked by the body.
According to this view, no. It's the body fighting the virus in the thyroid. The body, in this view, is always working for you, always trying to heal and protect.
Okay, that's a major reframe. What's another great mistake?
Another significant one the source highlights is labels as answers.
Labels as answers, meaning diagnoses.
Yeah, this might sound simple, but the book gives it a powerful twist. It argues that diagnostic labels like Hashimoto's thyroiditis are just descriptions of what's observed.
Like inflammation in the thyroid first noted by Dr. Hashimoto.
Exactly. Etitis just means inflammation. But the label itself doesn't explain why the thyroid is inflamed.
Okay.
The source contends that because the underlying viral cause isn't seen or tested for, misdiagnosis is incredibly common.
And it uses that example of borderline Lyme tests, too, right, to talk about testing instability.
It does, suggesting if a pathogen is truly present, it's present. The idea of a borderline result for a pathogen, in the source's view, points to flaws in tests that rely on indirect markers like inflammation or immune responses, rather than finding the bug itself.
This really makes you question how much a diagnosis label tells us about the actual source of the problem, according to this material.
Definitely. Then there's the gene blame game, which is huge right now.
Oh, yeah, genetics seems to be the explanation for everything these days.
Well, From this source's perspective, genetics play only a tiny role in chronic illness.
Tiny. Really?
That's the claim. Blaming genes, whether it's for thyroid issues or saying things like MTHFR, BRCA are the primary drivers, is called a joker's game.
The Joker's game.
Yeah, it shifts blame away from the real culprits, pathogens and toxins, and, the source argues, hinders research and funding for understanding the actual root causes.
Wow. It even makes a strong claim about breast cancer and genetics, doesn't it?
It does. It goes as far as claiming breast cancer is nearly always caused by EBV, not primarily genetics like BRCA mutations.
And that focusing on genetics is a massive distraction.
A massive distraction from the true issue, according to the book.
Which leads us to what the source identifies as the real major factors.
Yeah.
Ignoring the unforgiving four.
Exactly. And these are the book's key villains. Toxic heavy metals.
Okay.
Radiation, viruses, and bacteria.
The unforgiving four and heavy metals get special attention.
Yeah, the source places particular emphasis on toxic heavy metals.
Right.
It's not just that they're harmful.
Right.
The book describes them as literally being food for pathogens like EBV.
Food for the virus.
Yes. And they also actively drain the immune system. So they're a double whammy, weakening your defenses and feeding the invaders.
Okay, that's heavy. And finally, a mistake that's described as deeply damaging.
The idea that it's all in your head or that you created your illness.
Oh, that's a harmful one. How does the source address that?
It absolutely pushes back. Hard. It firmly states that symptoms are physical and real.
So it's not about thoughts or karma?
Not at all. Illness is not a result of negative thinking, karma, or any personal fault.
What about stress and trauma? They often come up.
They're acknowledged, but the book presents them as triggers.
Triggers, not causes.
Exactly. They might weaken the immune system or provide fuel like adrenaline for pathogens if those pathogens are already present.
Okay.
But they are not the underlying cause of the illness itself. This perspective really lifts the burden of blame off the individual struggling with chronic symptoms.
That reframing feels incredibly significant, shifting from personal fault to understanding external triggers and invaders.
It really does.
Okay, speaking of invaders, let's really dive into the main one the source highlights. The Epstein-Barr virus, EBV.
Yeah, the book tells a detailed story about its journey in the body.
How does it start?
It presents EBV evolving over time. Initially, the source claims EBV was actually scavenging toxins, almost beneficial. Yeah, but then with the rise of industrial toxins, chemicals, pesticides, antibiotics, starting around the Industrial Revolution,
Okay.
the virus is said to have mutated, becoming more aggressive.
And it moves through distinct stages in the body.
That's right, according to the source. Stage 1 is dormant, kind of hiding out.
Right.
Stage 2 is when it can cause mono. That's when the immune system battles it in the lymphatic system before the virus retreats and hides deeper in organs like the liver or spleen.
And then stage 3.
Then in stage 3, it specifically targets the thyroid. That's where it causes the inflammation and the problems that get diagnosed as thyroid conditions.
And stage 4.
Stage 4 is the advanced stage. It moves towards the central nervous system and starts producing potent neurotoxins.
Neurotoxins. So how does the source explain EBV causing such a massive range of symptoms across the body? It seems like everything gets linked back to it.
Well, the core mechanism, as described in the book, is that viruses like EBV need specific fuel to thrive and replicate.
Fuel like what?
Things like adrenaline from stress, those heavy metals we talked about, pesticides, and certain foods.
Got it.
As the virus feeds and replicates, it creates waste products and those neurotoxins.
And those cause the problems.
The source claims these substances irritate and inflame nerves and organs throughout the body, leading to that huge list of symptoms.
And that list is incredibly long in the book, isn't it?
It really is. Brain fog, memory loss, that crippling fatigue.
The neurological fatigue from stage 4.
Exactly, that specific kind. Plus, anxiety, depression, aches and pains.
Attributed to neurotoxins and something called dermatoxin.
Right, and heart palpitations, restless legs, eye floaters, ringing in the ears, insomnia, headaches, migraines.
Headaches from neurotoxins inflaming cranial nerves.
That's the idea. Tightness in the chest, even things like hypertension and high cholesterol are linked back.
What about digestive issues, so common?
Yes, things like diarrhea, IBS, Crohn's, even celiac. They're tied back to strain on the liver and pancreas, sometimes a strep cofactor working with EBV, and the viral waste itself.
And skin issues like eczema and psoriasis?
Described as dermatoxins escaping through the skin.
Wow. And the book links specific, often seemingly unrelated conditions directly back to EBV, too.
Oh yeah. Lupus, it claims, is caused by EBV, which also compromises the thyroid,
As myths.
tied to EBV neurotoxins, inflaming nerves and causing lesions in the brain and spine,
Chronic fatigue syndrome.
specifically identified as stage 4 neurological fatigue from EBV,
Oh, what else? Hypoglycemia, type 2 diabetes.
linked to the burden EBV, and, interestingly, high dietary fat put on the liver and pancreas,
Parathyroid disease.
attributed to EBV targeting the glands or the central nervous system.
And we mentioned breast cancer before.
Right, the source claims it's caused by EBV traveling from the liver towards the thyroid, getting caught in the lymphatic system in the chest, and forming tumors there.
It's remarkable how many diverse health problems this one virus is linked to in this perspective.
It really is.
This brings us back to the thyroid itself. Given EBV is presented as the main attacker, the source has a fundamentally different view of the thyroid's role.
Absolutely. It strongly challenges the idea that the thyroid's primary job is hormone regulation.
So it's not the hormone factory we usually think it is?
Not primarily. Instead, the book posits it's more like the body's central data center, or maybe a second brain,
A data center doing what?
constantly monitoring homeostasis, like the body's internal balance throughout the entire system, sending and receiving signals.
And what's interesting is the emphasis on its resilience,
It's
right?
very much so.
Yeah.
The source claims that even if it's damaged by EBV or even surgically removed,
Yeah.
the remaining tissue, or even just its energetic essence, can still perform this vital data center function.
How?
The remaining tissue is described as adapting, getting stronger, and developing its own sort of personalized immune system with special fighter cells called lymphocytes to protect itself better.
So in this framework, the thyroid isn't the source of the problem or the symptoms. It's
yeah.
the victim of EBV and toxins.
Exactly. The book uses a vivid analogy.
Oh.
Imagine a clown at a birthday party popping balloons, and everyone blames the clown.
Okay.
But the real issue was the faulty latex supplier who provided weak balloons in the first place.
So the thyroid is the clown.
The thyroid is like the clown, getting blamed. While the real culprits, EBV and toxins, the faulty supplier, are overlooked.
That analogy really sticks with you and helps clarify the source's perspective. Okay, so if the root cause is EBV and toxins, what does the source propose we actually do about it?
Well, the key takeaway for healing is straightforward, at least in principle.
Okay.
You have to address the root cause. That means specifically targeting EBV and helping the body detoxify those accumulated toxins.
And this leads directly to the specific dietary recommendations in the book, which are pretty distinct.
Very distinct. There's a list of foods the source says to strictly avoid.
Okay, what's on that list?
Eggs, dairy, gluten, canola oil, corn.
Even organic corn.
Even organic, yeah, flagged due to potential contamination risks, according to the source. Also soy and pork.
And the reason for avoiding these isn't necessarily about inflammation in the usual sense.
Right. The crucial point here, according to the source, is that these foods specifically feed EBV and other pathogens.
They fuel the fire, basically.
Exactly,
Yeah.
providing them with the resources to replicate and generate those toxins and waste products that cause the symptoms.
And there's a particular warning about pork fat.
Yeah, the source gets specific there. States it stays in the bloodstream for an unusually long time, reduces oxygenation, which the body needs for healing, and puts a heavy burden on the liver.
Hindering its ability to clear toxins and fight pathogens.
That's the claim.
Okay, so those are the foods to avoid. What about the foods to eat? The healing foods?
Right. In contrast, the source champions a list of healing foods. These are described as supporting the immune system, helping to cleanse the body, killing pathogens, and assisting with heavy metal detox.
What kind of foods are we talking about?
Things like artichokes, bananas, all kinds of berries, especially wild blueberries, cauliflower, celery, cilantro, dates, ginger, hemp seeds, kale.
Lots of fruits and vegetables.
Definitely. Lemons and limes, lettuce, mangoes, even pure maple syrup is okay in moderation, the source says. Spinach, sprouts, and microgreens, squash, sweet potatoes, thyme, tomatoes.
And wild blueberries get a special mention often, right? Along with cilantro.
Yes, especially for detox.
Yeah.
And there are specific protocols highlighted. A big one is drinking 16 ounces of pure celery juice first thing in the morning on an empty stomach.
Why celery juice?
The source claims this helps rebuild hydrochloric acid in the stomach, which is crucial for proper digestion and killing off pathogens entering the system.
Okay. And the heavy metal detox smoothie, that's another cornerstone.
Absolutely. It contains specific ingredients that the source says work together synergistically.
How does that work?
It describes a unique pass the football action to bind onto heavy metals and escort them out of the body.
Pass the football.
Yeah. The ingredients are barley grass juice, extract powder, spirulina, cilantro, wild blueberries, and Atlantic dulse.
And they work together.
The idea is that they each grab onto different types of heavy metals and then sort of pass them along to the next ingredient in the chain, ensuring the metals don't get dropped back into tissues before they're eliminated.
Interesting mechanism. Are there other simple protocols?
Yeah, things like lemon or lime water, ginger water, and aloe water or cucumber juice are also mentioned.
And lowering fat intake.
Yes, there's a strong emphasis on lowering overall fat intake, even healthy fats temporarily, to help thin the blood. The source says this makes it easier for the body to flush out pathogens and toxins efficiently.
What about supplements or specific nutrients?
Iodine is mentioned as important, presented as a crucial antiseptic that targets viruses and bacteria, and essential for thyroid health overall.
And zinc?
Zinc is highlighted as absolutely critical for immune function, described as being widely deficient in people today.
And cruciferous vegetables. Some people worry about those with thyroid issues.
The source says they are actually beneficial for the thyroid and dismisses the goitrogenic concern as an unfounded fad that prevents people from eating healing foods.
Good to know that perspective. It's also noted that healing takes time, doesn't it?
Definitely. The source is clear. It can be a year or even more. So it emphasizes not getting discouraged if progress isn't immediate.
And the book includes personal stories like Sally's.
Right. Sally was a nurse dealing with a multitude of symptoms: thyroid nodules, diagnosed with Hashimoto's, struggling with weight, feeling dismissed.
What happened with her?
By following the source's approach focusing on EBV, changing her diet according to the recommendations, she reportedly came off multiple medications, including thyroid hormone.
Her levels normalized.
Yeah, her thyroid levels normalized, her nodules disappeared. Weight loss was slower, but her story is presented as evidence that addressing the underlying viral issue, as described, can lead to significant recovery.
Her experience really brings to life the potential healing described in this material when you focus on the root cause, according to this view.
It does make it more tangible.
Okay, moving on to another common symptom often linked to thyroid issues conventionally: sleep problems. Insomnia.
That's right. Insomnia is acknowledged as very common among people with thyroid issues, but the source states it's not actually a thyroid symptom itself.
Not directly from the thyroid. Then what?
It's seen as a common companion to EBV infection, part of that whole cluster of neurological symptoms.
And the book lists several potential causes for disturbed sleep related to these underlying issues.
Yes. It mentions things like toxic heavy metals messing with brain chemistry and nerve signals.
Okay.
A sluggish liver going into spasms, often around 2 a.m., waking people up. Digestive issues sending disruptive signals to the brain via the vagus and phrenic nerves.
Emotional factors, too.
Yes, emotional wounds and trauma causing neural burnout, or even scarring in brain tissue, according to the source. Adrenal imbalances leading to adrenaline surges that wake you up.
Anything else?
MSG toxicity is mentioned, and severe neurological dysfunction, which is often rooted in past trauma or PTSD.
That's a lot of potential factors. But it offers some reassurance, too, right? About healing even without perfect sleep.
It does. It offers a really reassuring point. Even if you aren't getting deep, restful sleep, the source says you are still healing. Especially if you are lying down with your eyes closed between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. This time frame is described as a sacred window.
Sacred window.
Where the body performs most of its critical healing and repair work. And the source claims part of your brain is still getting restorative rest, even if you feel awake or are tossing and turning.
That's comforting. What about bad dreams?
The source touches on bad dreams, suggesting they're not purely negative.
Really?
In this perspective, they're seen as the soul processing and healing old emotional wounds. A necessary part of recovery, apparently backed by a physical process in the brain that helps create boundaries during waking hours.
So they serve a purpose.
That's the idea. And there's also the concept of the sleep wellspring.
Sleep wellspring.
The idea that sleep isn't something you lose forever if you miss it. The source suggests sleep kind of accumulates with every waking breath and is available like banked when you can finally get it. You never truly lose sleep.
That's a hopeful thought. Finally, the book touches on a spiritual dimension related to illness and healing.
It does. It really reinforces the message that illness is not your fault. It's not a punishment you deserve.
That's such an important point.
Absolutely. And it introduces this beautiful idea that your soul holds gold and gems and jewels.
Meaning?
Meaning your wisdom, your understanding, resilience, the strength you've gained through facing hardship and challenging experiences.
Okay.
And in this spiritual view, the thyroid itself is seen as having a spiritual role.
Beyond the data center function.
Yes, a shield or a guard protecting these precious soul treasures.
Wow. And its spirit remains active even if the gland is damaged or removed.
That's what the source claims. Its spiritual essence remains, continuing that protective function.
It really frames the journey through chronic illness not just as a physical battle, but also as maybe an opportunity to shed the illness and reclaim the power and wisdom you've accumulated.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Okay, that was truly a deep dive into the world presented in medical medium thyroid healing. It's certainly a distinct and, for many, probably a challenging perspective on chronic illness, especially thyroid conditions.
It definitely is.
The key takeaways, as presented in this source, really shift the conversation that chronic illness might be driven by viruses and toxins.
Right. Specifically EBV in many cases here.
That many conventional explanations could be incomplete or maybe off the mark.
Or just looking at symptoms, not the root cause.
That the body is always working to heal itself, it never attacks itself.
A core principle in this material.
And that specific dietary and lifestyle approaches, as outlined in the book, are crucial for supporting that healing by targeting the root cause, the virus, and the toxins.
Yeah, this source definitely pushes you to look beyond the usual suspects, beyond just autoimmunity or genetics, and consider hidden factors like viruses and heavy metals as primary drivers.
It offers a narrative where the body isn't attacking itself, but is fighting external invaders.
And for you, our listener, considering this perspective that many persistent symptoms might stem from these unseen battles, the body is fighting against specific pathogens and toxins.
Well, what does this different way of looking at illness make you consider about your own health journey, or maybe just your understanding of disease in general?
It really makes you ponder the potential hidden factors at play, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And contemplate the body's described inherent capacity to heal when supported in the specific ways suggested by this source material. Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We hope exploring this source has given you some new insights and maybe sparked some further curiosity.